Welcome to Geek on Film with your hosts, Robbie Holmes and John Hosch. Welcome to episode 18, folks. Here we go. We're here with an unbelievably super jam-packed episode. I'm Robbie.
Hello, I'm John.
So this week we're going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy's holiday special over on Disney Plus, and then The Fabelmans is our two main reviews. But John suggested I watch some movies. I did a rewatch. I've been a busy beaver. Is really
You're
what it
very, very busy this week. So
let's start off on some TV fun and games. So I finally finished out our rewatch of Game of Thrones. Got to the final episode. And I think the funniest aspect of it was my wife looked at me and she was like, I don't hate it as much as I did the last time. And I'm like,
wow.
I think the reality is you just are not as surprised.
Do you think?
I think that's the bigger problem. You know?
Do you think you didn't hate it as much because you've been watching House of the Dragon? So you're like, I know it's a prequel, but you're like, oh, there's life past this ending.
Maybe. I think the other one is like when you walk away, right? Spoilers for Game of Thrones. You've got Starks in leadership all over the place, which is not a negative, right? My big complaint is like, I feel like Daenerys became a caricature episode 4, post the final battle, season 8, episode 4, when they were on their way to King's Landing. She became this caricature of like a demented leader that she wasn't up to that point, you know? And I feel like things change. So I still don't love the way it ended. I think that like if things had ended with, we can always fictitiously write a better ending, in my opinion. But I think if they had not lost the second dragon and Jon still had a dragon, and Dany's dragon, Drogon, was killed in the final battle, what would have been awesome was when she went to ascend the throne, Jon tried to stop her. And in the end, Jon's dragon burned her and the throne. Like, it would have made more sense if she was... So I think there's a lot of possibilities, but it's always coulda, woulda, shoulda, and I have an idea of where I want this to be. But if we take a step back, I didn't love the finale. I still don't think it's the way I would have liked it to end. And I think it's less powerful because of that. You know, the sort of everybody shrugs that Bran the Broken is now the king of the 6 realms because his sister is an independent community in the north is all right. I mean, you know, the whole show, the whole idea was like, who's going to end up on the throne? And then Drogon decided nobody, you know? Okay. So it's a hard thing to revisit because I knew where it was going. So in this case, it didn't make it easier for me. It definitely softened the blow for my wife. So
you should call George R.R. Martin and pitch the ending, since he probably hasn't written it yet.
I mean, you know, I can't. He's apparently 75% through the final book. That's the rumor that everybody says. So, let's jump over to something I think is a really great adaptation up to this point. Interview with the Vampire. Boy, episode 2, we finally have Louis getting his powers, becoming a vampire. Really powerful show. I'm so impressed across the board by the acting, by the storytelling. I just don't know what I was expecting, but like Sam Reed as Lestat is fantastic. Like he's like beautiful and confident in every aspect of what Lestat is in the books. Like he's got this like love and whimsy of music, and his approach to the world is about like, it's for me. All this is just for me. It's my world to live in, and you all just are there to like be my fodder, be the cattle I feed off of, or entertain me. You know, in this episode, they go to an opera, and he's completely dejected with the male lead of the opera, the tenor.
Does he eat
every time he sings? He's just like, ugh, like. But the opera that he's seeing, he was in the parlor when the opera creator created it 150 years ago. So he's like, he would have hated this. Like, so he ends up like they end up taking the tenor back to their house and eating him over the entire evening. But he breaks him down before that. He's just like, every time he like has him sing, and in the music, Lestat has bit his finger and put a red blood mark
Mhm.
everywhere that he fails
Oh.
while he was listening to it. And then he plays it and he's like, no. Like every time he sings, he like completely crushes and takes away all of his confidence, which drives Louis crazy. Louis is just like, why do you have to play with your food?
Mhm.
Basically. Like, but the reality is Lestat is just offended, right? Like he's like, music is to be enjoyed. The person who created it loved it. Like, and I love music, and this guy is an atrocity. And so it's brutal in the way that it handles it. Also, we get a fantastic sequence where Louis goes back to see his sister after she's given birth, and she hands the baby to him, and the, he's can't really control himself, and it gets really close to him eating the baby. And it's awesome because he's telling the story to Eric Bogosian's character,
Uh-huh.
and Eric's like, "Let's go back to the baby. Did you
I'm
eat the baby?" And it happens multiple times, and finally he's like, "I was able to walk away."
I mean, he could
But
stick the, umbilical cord and the, placenta, I guess, if you
I
wanted to.
guess, yeah. But it was unbelievably brutal watching poor Louis try to like not kill his nephew, but
Right.
also Eric Bogosian's character Daniel just poking and prodding him like, let's get back to this, you monster. Did you eat the baby? Like um it's fun. The show is beautiful,
Cool.
and I can't wait to see more of it. I'm also really interested to see what directions they go. It's definitely not a direct adaptation. It's very influenced by the books, and it's definitely not trying to take the path of the movie. We have a lot more sensuality, a lot more like affection, physicality between Louis and Lestat already, and I'm really glad. Like in the text, you hear that he's like, he was my maker, my lover, my this. You actually feel that a lot more in the show, which I think the movie didn't lean in on, which I think
Yeah.
it's better, right? Like there's an intimacy between Louis and Lestat. Like Lestat chose him after 200 years to
Right.
be his companion. There's a reason, right? Like he's
Sure.
infatuated with Louis. Louis drives him at one point. He says like, "You, I know, every night will drive me crazy from like sundown to sun up. Like you are going to question everything I say," and like I love it. I love that you're here. So he's not somebody who just wants a yes man. He's chosen Louis to be his partner.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm really impressed. I think that like when it comes down to it, Jacob Anderson as Louis, I couldn't ask for any more. Like he's sort of a better Louis than Brad Pitt, which is saying. I think Brad surprised me in that film. I think we talked about it a little bit the last time. I always thought it would be interesting if they had swapped roles.
Mm.
But I think in the end, like we ended up in the right place. I think Tom Cruise has the ability to play and the arrogance to play Lestat that I don't know that Brad Pitt has.
Right.
Whereas in this case, I think Jacob Anderson has this ability to play um, infatuated, protective, strong. We've seen him as Grey Worm all throughout Game of Thrones. I just finished rewatching him, right, and
Mhm.
seeing him in this is it's so exciting because he's so reserved in Game of Thrones, and seeing him sort of cut loose and be this like powerful businessman in Louisiana, in New Orleans, in the 1900s, right? When a light skinned black man would have a hard time, right?
Mhm.
And he doesn't. He's just confident. And that's one thing that Lestat plays with. Like he slows the world down and he speaks in his head, and he's just like all of them. Like they don't trust you. They underrepresent you. You should be more confident. Like, and it's cool to see the back and forth of like Lestat propping him up, but also Lestat manipulating him. They go to the opera and he has to act as his manservant, because that was society. So I'm really enamored with it. I'm excited to see where it goes,
That's
and
cool.
I'm really excited to get to them creating the little monster that's coming soon.
I mean, it's cool. It sounds like, like adding a person of color, especially a black man in that role, adds a lot of drama for the time period, which I think is cool that they did that.
It does, and it also adds like a really nice like Lestat was under he was middle class and upper middle class and has spent a lot of time being all different things because of who he was. He was an actor for a while. If you continue to read Vampire Lestat, he like gave up his titles. So like I think Lestat as a person, as a character, really understands what it is to be above your station, and he sees Louis and he's like, they're all underestimating him, right?
Mm.
Louis is amazing and is a businessman, and like so it's really fun because he's not encumbered by being a black man in New Orleans in that time period, and he can
Mhm.
sort of foist Louis forward, and he supports him. They eventually buy one of the brothels of the big main brothels, and Louis now the boss. And Lestat like co-signs it, like so. There's a little bit of that I think is really unique that wasn't in the books, which I think is even cooler.
Cool. From one vampire show to another. Talk to me about Let the Right One In on Showtime.
So Let the Right One In. I feel like I've now watched 2 episodes, and it seems like I'm watching a movie every time I watch an episode. They are extremely dense.
Is that good or bad?
It's good,
Okay.
but it's interesting because like I feel like I've watched more than 2 episodes worth of a show. I feel like I know these characters better than I should, not because I've seen the movie, because these characters are not directly depicted in the movie at all.
Right.
There's a little bit like there's 2 main children. You've got Eleanor and who's the boy? So Ellie and Isaiah, right?
Uh-huh.
Eleanor and Isaiah. He's great. Ian Foreman plays Isaiah, the little neighbor boy, and the woman who's the young woman who's playing Eleanor is Madison Taylor Bays, and she's fantastic. Like,
Great.
um, but the stealing of every scene is everyone else, and these kids are really great, which
Uh-huh.
is unbelievable. Like I feel like they did what they tried to do in the movie, which was like the most important characters in this movie are these children, and then you cut to this is a larger story. It's bigger than the movie was.
Hmm.
So you have instead of it being a man servant to Ellie, it's actually her father, and he's played by Damon Beecher, and he's like powerful
He's
and
great. I like him a lot as an actor.
but like he's so good in this role because you can see the pain of him being a father,
Sure.
and also like he doesn't want his daughter to be a vampire, but like he loves her and
Uh-huh.
he's disgusted by the fact that like he has to feed her, and it's so well done. And then the next door neighbor, who is the mother of his friend Isaiah, is played by Anika Noni Rose, and she's unbelievable. Like she vibrates on screen. She
Uh-huh.
plays like a homicide detective who's a single mom to this little boy, and she's unreal. Like every time I see her interact with anyone else, I'm like, you all should just take a step aside and let her just own the scene. Like
Uh-huh.
she's unbelievable. Every time she's on camera, I can't take my eyes off of her. I feel like she's got this like unbelievable energy. Her presence is really, really overwhelming, but in the best possible way. Like every time she says something that is even remotely smartass, you like feel yourself being brought towards her. Like she plays this like dry, like homicide detective,
Uh-huh.
and her ex-husband is sort of a mess. He's been a drug addict, and maybe it's very messy, but she's great. She's this like unbelievable rock for her son. And then there's another storyline playing out, which is a scientist um, who was originally like a person who made drugs for pain, sort of like the Sattler family, and it's played by Zeljko Ivanek. You've seen him in
Oh,
lots of
that
stuff.
crazy dude. Yeah, he was on True Blood.
Yeah,
He does a lot of procedural stuff. Yeah.
but he has a son who also has vampirism. He's been
Ah.
attacked. So he's using his scientific mind to try to save him. And you see very early on that like the drug he gives him doesn't work, and his son almost burns up in the sun.
Uh-oh.
And so he's now sort of scarred and burned. But you find out that he has a daughter who is also a scientist, played by Grace Gummer, who is one of my favorite parts of Mr. Robot. Right? Like,
Gotcha.
so again, we're bringing in like amazing character actor after amazing character. So like that's the thing about this show that I'm really loving is like I can't wait to meet more people because every casting decision they made, I'm like, yeah, I would like to spend more time with this person. And it's just really smart. The show is really smart. I feel like the casting, honestly, they should be giving awards to this casting director because the person playing his father is Otto Essendo. He plays Frank. You would recognize him for sure. Like the head of security is Nick Stahl. You'd recognize him. Like again,
Yep.
every character actor that is working right now is on this show, is what it feels like. Everybody you've liked in a show in the last 2 years, you're like, cool, that person's definitely going to get a role in the first season of this show, and it's really impressive.
Cool.
And I can't wait to watch more. That's I also feel like it's a show that you can't that I need to sort of parcel out because it's so dense. Kind of similar to Interview with the Vampire as a show. I feel like they're long episodes. They're always an hour long, but it's like watching a whole movie.
Mm.
So I feel like it's enough for me to watch. Like this would be a really good weekly watch, and I know I'm a little behind. I think they're up to episode 7, and I'm only up to episode 2. So I would like to catch up a little bit, but I also am really glad that I have this like a couple of shows that I can watch on my own that I can feel like I can dig into and get something very deep out of. So I'm really impressed with both of these shows, to be honest.
Well, you'll have more time to watch Let the Right One In because one of our favorite shows on television at the moment just had their final episode of season 1,
It's
talking
true.
about Andor on Disney Plus. This past week, at the time of this recording, they just did their season finale.
Yep.
So,
So the question is, how many times did you cry during this? Because like that's a good indicator. For me, I would say it's at least 2, maybe 3.
there are some really great moments in this. So Cassian finally gets back to um, what's the planet? It's not Fennec. It's the Daughters of Fennec, right?
Phoenix.
Fennec.
Phoenix.
Oh, that is the
Yeah.
planet's name.
Mhm.
So he finally gets back there because he wants to see his mother, but unfortunately, in last episode, his mother passed away. But we get her kind of funeral procession, and I thought this was so cool. It's like you have all these townspeople playing instruments and like non-weapon types of things, and they're like coming up against the imperial guards and guns and stuff like that. And
So
man, oh man,
one note I want to give you, and I don't know if you've listened to as many podcasts as I have about it, but someone pointed out that the intro music to the
yeah,
show
it always changes.
has been changing.
Yep.
Do you know what it actually is? It's the funeral march.
Mm.
They've been adding in layer after layer. So the final episode's introduction is the funeral march music.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
every aspect of the show is thought out. Like that's the thing I'm blown away by. Like I don't know how many times I can watch this and still find something new, but like I'm so looking forward to a rewatch.
Yeah, and I think for me the big well, let's see, is it one of the big things? Well, there's a couple of big things that happen. There's a moment where Andor goes to the wall where like everyone is turned into a brick and then is added to the wall, and he comes across kind of his surrogate father, I would say, his surrogate father's brick, and I thought that was a really nice moment because like it's the first time I think we're actually seeing these bricks that people are talking about. So I thought that was a really nice moment.
Yeah.
And then, as they're doing the funeral procession, B2 emo, right? That's
Yep.
he projects this just like all the good droids in Star Wars, projects image of Cassian's mom giving a speech, about how everyone needs to rise up, and it's easier for her to talk because she's dead now. And I thought it was really interesting. And
Well, and I love the fact that in the last episode, right, when when Cassian's friend Brasso comes and talks to B2, he's like, "You have an important job. You
yeah,
have to go do an important job," and he doesn't tell him what the job is
yeah,
because B2 can't lie. Right? He's too honest and knows he's too empathetic. So they give him this job, which is basically to project Marva above above the people. And that is the important job that he's told that he has to go with the Daughters of Phoenix, and they will help him. He can do this job. And I think it's so unbelievable. Like there's even little beautiful moments of like the person from the leader of the Empire troops throwing his jacket over B2, and it half covers her.
yeah,
So half of her is in dark and half of her is in light, and she's talking about the Empire, right? Like there's so much symbolism in everything. And also Brasso ends up, when the battle begins, he like hits people from the Empire with her stone. Like she's part of the battle, which is
Yeah.
even better, right? Like the battle. She's the tipping point, right? Like she is the ember that sparks the rebellion, right?
Yeah.
Physically, actually, in that moment, the first attack is him.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've said it and everyone has been saying it who likes Star Wars or people who do not like Star Wars, but I mean, it's like you don't need the Skywalkers, you don't need Jedi, you don't need lightsabers. You don't even need a ton of aliens. You can tell human stories in the world of Star Wars, and heaven forbid, they're actually more engaging and like more moving.
Yeah.
So as much as like we've said this before, I think on the podcast, I love the Mandalorian. He currently probably my favorite character, but
Mhm.
um, there's a place for those and there's a place for this, and I think it's really awesome. It's so
Yeah.
funny because I think my brother-in-law's nephew, but not related to me, um, was asked, I think, who his favorite Star Wars character was, and this was when this is when Rogue One came out,
Yep.
and at that time the kid was like Cassian Andor, and like everyone was like, you're dumb. Like, why do you like that dude? He's only in Rogue One. But now, in hindsight, I don't know if he still likes Cassian Andor, but I think like that's someone to look up to. It's a
He is
really
going to be a
incredible
lot of
character.
people's favorite character.
Yeah.
I also just want to shout out, like, there's some amazing synergy in this episode. We finally get everybody on the same planet, right? Solving a lot of the storylines make their way to Phoenix. But there's also like this really great little storyline with Mon Mothma outing her husband as having a gambling problem again. But she tells the driver that she wants privacy, and she knows that he's a spy, so he definitely is going to listen in. And there's little things like she unbuttons her jacket, right? She's allowing herself to be exposed. She's
Mhm.
letting her guard down. Like there's little things in the physicality of the show that are really unbelievable. And then her husband, who's kind of a jerk, is defensive, but now it's exactly how you would react if you had been gambling, right? Like, so she sort of seeds, in my opinion, the fact that she is going to allow the marriage to happen between her daughter and this like mob boss's son because of this gambling debt. So we'll stop looking at her finances. Like Mon Mothma is an early person who has to give up so much of her. We don't know anything about Mon Mothma except for the fact that she was a senator who was in support of the rebellion,
Yeah, she's been in
and
trouble all
now we've
through.
seen how much she's given up, right? Like,
Right.
she's questioned her morality, she's questioned her choices in life, and she's even given up on like her daughter, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
she's now similarly put her daughter in a position to marry somebody that through an arranged marriage, like she was, so much like beauty in the show, like just showing you how much other people have gone through, and to think about like it's great that we got to the point where we could have hope with the Skywalkers, but all of these people gave up so much for you to get to hope, right? Like we
Totally.
had to get past the spark of the rebellion. We had to cross the threshold. We had to start the fight. And these people started the fight.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this day and date that it came out, or maybe I don't know when they're going to take it off, but in America at least, they're offering at least the first two episodes on Hulu if you have Hulu account, but not a Disney Plus account. So if you've been wanting to check this out, but you don't have a Disney account or a friend's Disney account, and you have Hulu, you can at least watch at least the first two episodes.
Yeah, I really wish they had released the first three to them because I,
I
I feel
know
like that is sort of the
that's
anchor
how
that
they're
would
gonna
get you going.
how they're gonna get people. That's
Oh,
how people to get those Disney Plus subscriptions. They got to get
so
those up.
no surprise here. We loved Andor. I think it is the best television show on right now. And that's saying something. There's an amazing. You've heard me lovingly talk about two other shows that I'm enamored with, and I still think Andor is the greatest show that's on television this year, and that's including the Secessions. Like that's right. Like there's an amazing amount of great television happening right now, and
Uh,
Andor, in my opinion, is the greatest show on television this year. It's unbelievable.
take that for a pull quote. Disney Plus.
Yeah, I couldn't be more enamored. And I really loved Rogue One, and I was
Mhm.
really concerned about us going backwards in time and trying to like retrofit these characters in. And I think I'm so excited with where season two could go,
Yeah,
and I really wonder if they're going to stick to only two seasons.
Well, we'll see.
This show has been so good. I don't know that it's gotten the ratings they hoped it would get, but its critical
Yeah,
acclaim I think is going to be huge.
we'll see what
I
happens
can't
with.
wait to see what the Emmys do with this. You know,
Yeah, it's all about the award season. So let's transition. So we've got 5 movies to talk about before our 2 reviews. So we've got a lot to cover. But
let's see.
first,
We can go a little out of order from what we have down. I rewatched Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. If you remember, this was absolutely the hashtag not for Robbie film.
this was episode 2.
Yeah, we
Of our
did
podcast?
this, and I wrote a review of it, and I was like, God, I can't. This is not a film that's made for me, but I had a lot of positive things to say about it, and I've listened to a bunch of podcasts about it, and I've spent a lot of time. It stuck with me a lot longer than I expected, and it turns out that the
This is your
only way
unhealthy relationship movie.
it's pretty terrible.
You don't
But
have a good
it's
relationship with this movie.
I don't, but I really, in the end, am much more high on it than I was. I think initially I was around a
Well, it's the
2.5.
holiday season, so you know.
And now I think I'm closer to a 3.5.
Oh,
I really do think the movie did not meet what I was expecting the movie to be, but the more I'm away from it, the more I realize what film it is. So I
mm,
went in with preconceived notions about the type of film I thought it was going to be, and I think I held it against it. So I'm
fun.
going to take a step back and say I was wrong. I think Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is a film that I can enjoy.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is the only way to get the 4K Blu-ray version of it is to buy it from Best Buy. So it has an exclusive on the 4K release. So
Okay.
I bought it through Amazon thinking it was 4K. Turned out it was Blu-ray. Sent it back.
Uh,
Found it on Best Buy. So this is how much I really wanted to watch it, quote
wow.
unquote, in the highest possible uh, caliber I can get my hands on. I'm really impressed with it as a film. I think it moves really quickly. I think there is so much to be said about the cast. I think it's so smart casting the actors that they brought in. And I think, rewatching it, I can't get over how good Rachel Sennett is. Like, she delivers lines in this film that are silly and goofy and then can turn on a dime and make you care and has an emotional weight to it. She's sort of the backbone of this group of friends without you realizing it. Like, also, she has the line of the entire movie for me, which is about her having a podcast about, it's hard. I have to have a calendar and I have to schedule people. It's a lot of work. I still think it's one of the funniest things in the film, but I also think the actress steals almost every scene she's in. Like, between her relationship with Lee Pace in this, who plays Greg,
Uh,
it's just great. Like, I still love. I want the Lee Pace, Pete Davidson, I Hate You buddy cop movie, because Pete Davidson is so annoyed with Greg through the whole movie. Like, David, he's just like, I hate that guy. Like, and it's funny. Like, going back and seeing it again, like, if you just listen to the audio in the background, he like gets mad at him for opening the champagne but for taking the sword off the wall. But he's mad at him for opening the champagne, and then he's mad at him for like pouring the expensive tequila. There's constantly in the background you can hear David being like, "Fucking, I hate that guy," right? Like, it's just constant. And then the conversation between him and his really close friend Sophie is mostly about Lee Pace, right? Like, he's just like, I don't know, I'm better looking than it. Like, I couldn't stop laughing. And then, if you've seen the movie, you see that the outcome for David has something to do with Greg also, which is ridiculous and so funny. And yeah, I think it might be the movie that uses Pete Davidson the most appropriately. Like,
wow.
he's not the focal point of most of the movie. I think he brings a lot of, like, he brings Pete Davidson to the movie without stealing the film as Pete Davidson, the character, which I think is really cool.
Did you see was it King of Staten Island or whatever?
I did. And I feel like that movie, I hate to say it, but it felt very like everyone involved. It was a little self-indulgent across the board. I feel like the way of working, that sort of improv style that the movie was made through, didn't help the storyline. I feel like there were a lot of scenes that you got a lot of like sentiment, but without a lot of story movement.
Gotcha.
And I feel like it hurt the film in the long run. I think it would have been better if it was a little tighter.
Cool. Well, I guess Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is like your high school sweetheart that you broke up with and you always think about the relationship with them.
Apparently, yeah.
Talk to me about Doctor Sleep Director's Edition 4K Blu-ray, also available
So,
on Amazon Prime.
Doctor Sleep is a film that I never got to see.
Yeah, it's
Right?
you.
It's the sequel to The Shining, and it's based on a book written by, I believe it's Joe Hill, his Stephen King's son.
Oh, I thought it was by Steven.
It might be. I don't think so.
You keep talking about it.
Um,
I'll fact check.
yeah. So I think the thing I was really impressed with in this is you get a really interesting take on what The Shining and what would happen if there was more than one person that had it. So
Uh-huh.
we knew from the first film that at least the chef had it, right?
Yeah.
At the resort. And in this world we get the cult known as the True Knot that basically feed on what they call the steam, right? Which is released when somebody who has the shining is sort of tortured. The more fear, the more steam.
Right.
And honestly, I was really impressed with the film overall. Like I never saw the non-director's cut edition, so I can't speak to that, but I can speak to this movie and the way that it's unfolds. Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat is one of the most chilling villains. She
Oh.
is beautiful and powerful and scary and unbelievable. Like her ability to like lead this group of basically vampires, right? Because they feed on the fear and shining that's happening. Is really well done. And then you've got all these other really great character actors playing the True Knot. You know, you've got Cliff Curtis playing Billy Freeman, who you've seen in a bunch of things. You know, like there's the guy who plays Barry the Chunk is Robert Longstreet, which you've seen in a like everybody's someone you've seen. You know, like they meet Snakebite Annie, who has the ability to like control people with the shine a little bit. She can like maneuver them, and they
Uh,
bring her into the True Knot, and she's played by Emily Ann Lind. You know, all these everyone who's in this is really fantastic. Crow Daddy's played by Zan McClanon, and he's great. Like everyone's unbelievable. All of the bad guys don't steal anything away from Rose the Hat, which I think is really she's the focal point. That is sort of the band leader of this group of. But it's not. There's no stereotypes. There's no. It's a very mixed group of people that come together because they have this power. It's
cool.
really all it is. And then you end up in this world where a little girl has this power, it can shine, and it's Abra, who's played by Kylie Curran, and her and Dan Torrance, who is the grown-up version of Danny from The Shining,
He's
are
playing
connected sort of,
Ewan McGregor, right?
and it's played by Ewan McGregor. The movie's great.
Cool.
It's scary and it's creepy, and you spend an awful lot of time in the first like 3 acts getting to know the characters. I feel like it's like 2 hours and I think it's 2 hours and 30 minutes for the director's cut or the three. It's the 3 hour release.
Cool.
But Mike Flanagan is the one who wrote and directed this.
Yeah.
So if you like Mike Flanagan, if you are a fan of all of the things he's made
All the
recently,
scary things on Netflix. Like,
right? If it's on Netflix and it's scary, it's probably him.
yeah.
But the way that he sort of, I think, won out and took this over was that he met with Stephen King, who did write the novel this is based on, and basically told him very pointedly he wanted to take them back to the Overlook, and he wanted the Overlook to burn down, which is the ending of the in The Shining. So he wanted to reconcile what Stanley Kubrick did and fix the ending.
Ah,
So it gave Stephen King this sort of nod towards like, I get to have my cake and eat it too.
right.
We get to like continue this story. I trust you because you understand why I'm mad about this. And also he really did a great job of setting the world up because the first movie doesn't really give you a world, right? Like, so Doctor Sleep is really just it's a reframing of the ecosystem that The Shining exists in, and it's a small piece of this larger world, which I think is really smart.
I've heard people say they like this better than The Shining. So
I will say I watched the two of them in the last 3 weeks, and I enjoyed this film more.
Mm.
Um, it's a little bit pacing. I think this is a little more modern. I also like the way Mike Flanagan tells stories, so I'm drawn into that. Like he did Midnight Mass, which I think might have been my favorite thing of last year. I really love Midnight Mass. I think it's a fantastic show that could have, if it was a movie, it would have been probably broken into two or three parts. But boy, it's deep and powerful and smart. So I like his approach, but I also just think that you got like Ewan McGregor really just running with Dan Torrance. Like he's a broken man. You feel like he could be, running from his powers. At the beginning, you meet him and he's sort of hiding himself in a bottle because he doesn't want to deal with his power. And he's constantly on the edge of society. He ends up taking a bus to this place and meets people based on the fact that he has enough money in his pocket to take the bus there. Right?
Mm.
Like that's the world he's in at that point. He's so broken, and he's great. His level of empathy is for him is off the charts. You believe that he is this broken man, and
Right.
when somebody sees him and gives him a hand, Billy, you get this moment of like somebody else saw this poor broken man and is giving him a possibility at life, and I think it's unbelievable.
Cool. I should probably check that out. I haven't actually seen it.
But
Something
if
I
you're gonna watch it, you should definitely watch the director's cut. So if you buy it digitally on Apple TV, you can get to the extras if you have an Apple device.
right.
If you buy it, Vudu also allows you to get to all the extras.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
not just tied into the iTunes extras, but if you're gonna watch it digitally, that's how I ended up watching it. Is I bought it digitally and was able to watch it. I watched half of it the first time using Apple and casting it to my television, sharing my screen. And the 4K of it was really pretty awesome. And so was the Dolby Atmos track. It sounded unbelievable. And then I got lazy and finished the film using Vudu, which is also 4K HDR Dolby Atmos. But I don't think it was as crisp as the Apple release, which is what a lot of people talk about. Is Apple TV is just a higher like quality on both the sound and the video.
Besides besides wanting to see Doctor Sleep, something I also want to see that I have not gotten around to seeing, but it's always on my radar that you saw this week. Whiplash.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know that I've seen a movie that has really affected me more in a long time.
right.
J.K. Simmons and Miles Teller are both unbelievable in this movie and
Yeah.
for different reasons.
Sure.
J.K. Simmons plays the teacher at a music university in New York City, like a high end music school, and
And
Miles Teller plays the drums as a student there.
in the
And
jazz
he
band.
and
Yeah.
and yeah, and he's so the school basically revolves around multiple bands at multiple levels, and J.K. Simmons is the conductor of the like show band, the band that goes off and performs at other colleges and in performances around the world.
Uh-huh.
And boy,
Tyrant, I
J.K.
hear.
Simmons is brutal. He's unbelievable. His
Yeah.
ability to break down Miles Teller's character, his ability to break everybody down is unbelievable. But he gets a bead on and he gets a bead on people, right? Like so he sees Andrew playing in another band and he comes in and he has everybody in the band play a little bit. So he's like, give me 5 bars of this bass guy, do this, like, and he's literally going down the line and testing everybody in this band to see who's good. And mostly to shake up his own band is what it feels like. So no one feels comfortable in the top tier band.
Right.
And eventually, Miles Teller at that point, Andrew is this. He's not the core in the band he's a part of. He's the alternate drummer. And he gets in the chair, and basically, Fletcher is J.K. Simmons' character. He says, "All right, drums, you're with me." And the core gets up, and he's like, "Not you." And he like takes Miles Teller with him to the band, and he introduces him to his band. And now he's an alternate in that world. But the first time he spends any time with him, he starts asking him questions. Like he's like, "So, what does your father do?" And he's like, "Well, he's a writer." And he's like, "Well, what has he written? Anything I've read?" And he's like, "Well, he's more of a high school teacher." And then he's like, what about your mom? And he's like, I don't know. My mom left when I was 8. And he's like, so no music in your family at all. So he's asking all these questions that seem pretty innocuous. And then the first time that Miles Teller's character sits in the core chair, Fletcher just dismantles him with the little bit of information he has.
Yeah.
He's like,
Also,
no
beats
wonder
him
your
up.
mother left, right? Like,
Yeah.
why don't you go teach high school like your father, right? Like, you're never going to be anything. And it's unbelievable. So Miles Teller, really, in my opinion, I've seen him now in 2 or 3 films before Top Gun Maverick, and I'm really impressed with what he's able to pull based on the role he's playing. He feels, none of them feel the same. They all feel a little bit different from one another. In this movie, he plays an unbelievably cocky asshole who thinks that he is going to be the next greatest jazz drummer, and looks down on everybody else who doesn't play music. And that's powerful and believable. And that's the way he comes across, you know?
He actually was or is a drummer. So a lot of times when you're seeing him playing, he's actually playing. And then I saw an interview where, like, I guess in the movie they do a lot of close-ups of his fingers bleeding, and those are actually his fingers bleeding. That's real bleeding.
It's pretty crazy. He plays the drums a lot. There's a lot of sequences of him playing solo to try to really get better. And the first time you see him bleeding, he puts a band-aid on. The second time he puts a second band-aid over the top. First one's coming off, right? Like, and then I think the third time you see his hands bleeding, he like continues to play, and there's blood all over the drum in front of him. And in the end, he has like a Lexan, like a big plastic bin that he fills with ice, and he sticks his hand in. And the camera, like, this is where Damien Chazelle is an amazing director. It fills with blood. Like, his hand is bleeding so much that this entire plastic tub from below you see slowly fill with blood. That's how destroyed his hands are from what he's trying to do, and he's doing it to himself. In this case, it's not Fletcher, right? Like, it's the drive to be the greatest drummer on the planet, basically. Little other nice shout outs. Paul Reisner plays his father. He's
Oh, cool.
unbelievable. He's great. He's super believable. You believe every moment that he gives a shit, and he loves Andrew very much. And then his girlfriend, or the woman he's dating for a little bit, is Melissa Benoist,
Oh,
Supergirl herself, and she's great. She plays like really fun and really empathetic and like caring, and he's such a jerk to her. But like,
right.
that's par for the course, right? Like, he's a jerk to everybody who could slow him down. He even breaks up with her saying like, eventually you're going to hate me, and you're going to resent me, and you're going to tell me you want me to stop playing as much, and I'm going to resent you, and like, let's just cut it to the chase. And he probably thinks he's doing the right thing and helping her out, but the reality is he's just being an asshole, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's great. I don't know that I've felt more moved by a film in a long time, that like, especially like, your background going to theater school, my connection to all of that with you and my ex and things like that. I could see the drive, right? That's the thing that's really obvious, is like, this is a driven artist,
Right.
and I recognize that.
Cool. Yeah, definitely gotta check it out. You finally saw a movie that I really loved, and when I talked about it on the podcast prior, I didn't want to spoil much. But now that you've seen it and it's been out a little longer, maybe we can talk a little bit more about it. And the movie I'm talking about is Barbarian.
Yes. So
Robbie.
Barbarian, John watched it, basically said, like, I challenge you to watch this movie. It is now on HBO Max. If you are interested in sort of the wackiest horror film, maybe, that is getting mainstream appeal this year, you should see Barbarian. So the other thing that I did while doing this is, I'm part of the DC Tech community here, and there's a movies channel there. We have a Slack channel called Movies and TV, and someone in that group said, like, I'm sufficiently creeped out, I just finished Barbarian. And I was like, oh, I'm probably going to watch it, but I keep starting it and turning it off. And they're like, it's not that bad. Like, you can totally do it. And I was like, John got in my head. He was just like, I dare you to watch this film. So in the end, I think it is not nearly as much of a horror film as it is more a sort of twisted comedy in lots of ways. Like, it is really fucked up, but not the way a horror film usually is.
Uh,
Um,
I don't know about that. I mean, I think horror movies are pretty fucked up. You don't
yeah,
need.
but it's like more over the top, caricature esque. It just feels like heightened. Everything feels like heightened black comedy. Like
Yeah.
I was never to the
But
point where I felt like it was the jump scares were not that much. The gore, there wasn't a lot of things that really like. There was some really great creepiness and really good tense moments, but beyond that, I wasn't. I spent more time laughing at this film than I did. Maybe that's just saying I'm more twisted than I think I am. I spent a lot of time just being like, I can't believe this friggin' movie is happening. It's a little bit that same experience I think I had with like Triangle of Sadness, where I'm like, really, this is what we're doing. And I think those kind of films have really set me up to be okay with a film like this, which is just like sometimes you can just take a step back and be like, what now? Like, I guess. And there's a lot of that in this movie. There's a ton of times where I was like, well, that seems like a bad idea. Why are you? There's a hidden hallway in a basement. I don't know that you should go down there. So there's a lot of those moments in this movie that are really funny because you're like, well, yeah, it's a
that's
creepy
just your coping.
basement. Yeah, yeah,
But no, I get it. I mean, that's the whole point of these kinds of movies where it's like they're going down, so and they're forcing you to go down so that you know you get scared.
I didn't hate it. I think in the end, I think I gave it a 2.5 stars, and I think it's like sort of right middle of the road kind of film for me. Like I would suggest other people see it and just be like, if you have a pretty good dark sense of humor and you would like to spend a few minutes creeped out, I've got a film for you. Right? Like it's for the right person. Like this is not a kind of film like my wife would ever watch.
Well, if you think
Um,
about everything that happens in the film and who the actual villains are, I think it's a really brilliant movie. I think everyone thinks that there's this is big spoilers. We didn't do it last time, but like there's this man who doesn't want to like get kicked out of his 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 house in a way, or his neighborhood as it gets gentrified and they try to push everybody out. So then he builds like this like bunker, and then he starts kidnapping women and then making them have babies, and then just like inbred babies over after inbred babies. And you deal with like supposedly like the big scary monster, and this is like an inbred woman who has like crazy strength, but like all she wants is like a baby, and she wants to like breastfeed the baby. And like when it comes down to it, it's like she's not really the monster. Like the men are the monster in this
yep,
movie. And like Justin Long especially, he's a director or a writer in Hollywood, and he's being accused of sexual harassment and raping
yep,
this young actress. And then like you start to kind of feel for him in the beginning because you're like, I didn't do it, da, da, da. And then he like comes to this house that he owns that um and then he goes out to a bar and like meets up with old friends, and he's like talking shit, and it's like really disgusting. And then he does a really
yeah.
disgusting again, and he chooses himself over saving people. So I think it's just really really cool how like you don't know exactly who the barbarians are until
Right.
like the end. So
I think Justin Long is a really good horror actor. He loves and sort of is great as the guy you want to punch in the face.
mm,
Like he plays really good sort of smarmy asshole characters, and that's it's the what's his name, the guy who does Weekend Update on SNL. It's Michael Che, and who's the other dude?
the punchable face dude. I
Yes.
don't know.
But like I feel like Justin Long has gone from being this like, you know, actor who plays a lot of different types of characters to often playing the guy that you're like, seriously, dude, really? This is real. And like he's good at that. He's very believable as a guy that like is a jerk and would do a terrible thing, and like has cultivated that almost as like his brand for a while as an actor. And he's been in a ton of horror movies because of that. Like
It's
Kevin
kind of
Smith
where he
used him in
started.
Tusk, and like he's been in so many of those types of films.
Yeah, he was in the
Um,
Jeepers Creepers original movie.
yeah, I didn't hate this film. I think I really walked away from it like Georgina Campbell, who plays Tess, is great. You really empathize with her. She's extremely believable
Well, she
across
also
the
goes
board.
through some fucked up shit too, because like she's trying to help Justin Long. She's
Yep.
crawled through like, the mud and she's all dirty and she doesn't have keys and she's like hysterical. And she's in like a really like decrepit part of town and she like tries to get the cops to help her and they're like, "Oh, she's a crack addict." Like they
Yeah.
just assume when it's like there's just a lot of moments that are just like, reflections on society which are really really interesting, really well
Yeah.
done.
You could point the term barbarian at an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fun as far as like a horror film goes. It is the kind of film I feel like is approachable. But going in knowing as little as possible, which we just spoiled for you, would have been the right answer. Um, so if you're interested, you should definitely go see it. It's
But
on
at this
HBO
point
Max.
it's like shame on you guys. Come on.
Yeah, it was like
Everyone was talking about it.
the darling of the midnight experience at TIFF, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody came out of TIFF and they were just like, "This is the greatest horror experience I've had in a long time." All right, so like let's move as far away from Barbarian as we can get. So after seeing Fabelmans on Saturday, my wife and I came home and we watched E.T. the Extraterrestrial. I've had the Steelbook. I got it from Target a while ago, and it was just so much fun to revisit this film. But also, like, it's such an emotional film. It's one of the first films I saw in the theater. I saw it with my sister Debbie. It was like brother sister date,
Mhm.
and it's so moving. I think there's so much technical excellence that comes across in this film. So much of the film is shot from either ET's eye level or the children's eye level. And I think it's very on purpose, right? Like you are supposed to be seated with either ET or the kids. And, we didn't talk about this in Andor, but like the last episode, we talked about it. How much of it was actually shot through B2's vision, right? Like from this droid's level. And seeing ET reminded me of that. Like how much of this film is actually shot from ET's perspective and seeing the world for the first time through this extraterrestrial's eyes. And it's just so expansive and beautiful. Like I don't know any better way to describe ET, but like it's a little long after watching it for the first time in a long time. I think its length is a little more than I was expecting.
Is it you have the version where they change all the guns to like walkie-talkies and stuff?
I think so.
Yeah, like that's something that Spielberg he pulled a George Lucas and like he all like the state troopers there are like no guns anymore or something in the movie.
Yeah. I think there's some fun early cameos. You've got Erica Eleniak, the actress slash model, is as the young pretty girl. C. Thomas Howell is one of the
Oh,
boys.
Eleniak.
Eleniak, yeah. There's just really great actors across the board. Peter
Drew Barrymore.
Coyote as Keys is ridiculous. Drew Barrymore is a very unbelievable little sister character. Like it's ground zero for so many people. And this is one thing Spielberg has done over and over again is he's cast people that are going to go on to be important. And we should probably note that when we talk about Fabelmans. I think that is one of the things that we'll see. There's a bunch of people in this film who play children or teenagers that I think are probably going to be the next big group of kids. Yeah, the movie's fun. I don't know how else to explain ET. The sound quality is pretty good. It's not as good as I was hoping. It's a DTX 7.1 surround sound, so it's not Dolby Atmos. It's this sort of open source alternative to the object oriented DTX audio track. It's not as surroundy as I was expecting, to be honest. I expected a
Surround.
little more directionality and object oriented audio, and there's not as much as I was hoping for. The picture quality is pretty good, so much so that you can see where the effects are the effects at times. When the kids are riding their bikes, it's really obvious when it is not the actors. When Henry Thomas is 100% not the kid in the red hoodie. Um, but it still holds up.
Yeah,
Like,
man. I mean 1982. Come on.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it's so interesting to rewatch this because it was such an early. Like, I was born in '74. I was 8 when this movie was in the theaters. This is one of my first memories of going to the movie theater, and it definitely shaped me. I was very scared. Like that sequence in the middle where We see, E.T. and Elliot both getting sick, and then them taking over the home, and all of that was so devastating to an 8-year-old Robbie. And it's still moving. Like the more I spent, spending time with it again was really fun. I think it isn't in my top 10 Spielberg films probably, but it is in the narrative component of my life very important
Mhm.
to when I went to movies.
I was brought to this movie as a little kid when it first, maybe it first came out, but maybe it might have been a reissue because I think they
Mhm.
brought this a bunch of times. But I'm pretty sure it was also in the theaters for quite a long time. So
Yeah.
it was probably like 2 or 3, maybe 4. Um, and I just knew it was about an alien, and I was super freaked out. And it was like all I remember is like like a completely sold out auditorium. We're trying to find seats. We finally find seats, and I just see like feet running, like that shot, like the opening shot is like a bunch of feet like running through the
Yep.
field, and I got so freaked out. Everyone's quiet, and you just hear, "Get me out of here!" My parents had to take me out of the movie, and I never saw it until they finally released it on VHS with like half black, half green VHS set, and then I finally saw it. That was like middle school for me. So
Yeah. I mean, it's a movie it really influenced a lot of people. I also think it is some of the best kid acting you're going to find in a movie, right? Like the children don't feel at all fake in what they're trying to
mm,
do. They feel invested. They feel like they're actually reacting the way a child would react, right? Like the movie is interesting because of the perspectives, right? If you're a kid, you're like, these adults are terrible. And if you're an adult, you're like, we need to protect these kids.
mhm,
And I think that is a really interesting balance that Spielberg was able to strike. So if you were a child, you saw the adults as basically not listening to the kids. But if you're older, you're like, these kids, they may be exposed to an alien virus, right? Like, is really what this is coming down to. And why did Elliot get sick? So it's unbelievable to see both dichotomies in this film and understanding that both could be there. He really pays a lot of tribute to the children's perspective and gives them as much weight as the adults. And the mom in this is great. She loves these kids. And after watching Fabelmans, it's really interesting to revisit a film like this where there's a single mom, right? Like, and her husband is in Mexico with his new girlfriend, and um, it, it it really resonated a lot with me revisiting it and having that really front and center after watching Fablemans.
cool. So that wraps up all the movies that mostly Robbie watched this week. And now
Mm-hmm.
we're going to transition into our two main reviews. Um, we're first going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, which is available now on Disney Plus. It came out, I think, on Thanksgiving Day. I think they dropped
Mm-hmm.
it. You want
So
to take it away?
why don't you give us a review, like your breakdown of the movie? Like, why don't you run through the plot?
Yeah. Well, the special. So that's one of the things that like
Yes.
this is yet another of the Marvel specials that we're getting, and I want a bajillion of these Marvel specials. First one we got was Werewolf by Night for Halloween, and now we're getting this one for Christmas. And although it says Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, they are talking about Christmas in this movie. But I think that the great thing is like they're talking about like the idea of Christmas and like the sentimentality of Christmas. So what happens is and we get we got a lot of information that's important, I think, for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So the Guardians are now living in nowhere, which is the head of a dead celestial in space. Um,
And
that like
apparently they bought it from the
there.
collector.
Yeah. So they're living there now, and they're trying to set it up. And Peter Quill, played by um, uh, oh my gosh,
Chris Pratt.
Mr. Chris Pratt. He's really depressed. They say because he misses Gamora. Gamora was his love interest, and then she, spoiler alert, passed away in some of the other Marvel movies, but then they got her back from an alternate universe, and now she's gone. She's out gallivanting, and he can't find her. So he's really sad. So then you have Drax, played by Dave Bautista, and you have Mantis, played by Palm Clementif, I'm gonna say.
Yep.
And then you get some huge information here too, because Mantis, you know, says that she's hiding this secret that only Drax knows, where she was also a daughter of Ego, which is like the celestial being that was Peter's father. So in theory, Mantis and Peter are related. And she feels really bad that he's sad. So they go to Earth to kidnap Kevin Bacon, the greatest warrior of all time, based on what Peter Quill has told them. Because Peter Quill also was kidnapped as a young kid. So like his favorite movies are like Footloose and Friday the 13th and all those other things. So Kevin Bacon was huge for him. And it's really funny.
Yep.
The Christmas through a alien's lens is really funny. Like there's like James Gunn. This is written by James Gunn. He pitched this during the filming of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Kevin Feige was like, I'm interested. In 3 days, I think he had the script ready.
Yep.
So obviously it was like, I think they kind of, I think when you watch it, you kind of get that like really he's like seems bummed about like missing Christmas, and like they kind of tacked on the fact that he's like also missing Gamora really quickly, like in post.
Yeah.
But this is really it's a Mantis and Drax story, and I'm super excited about that.
It's basically a two-hander, right? Like
Yeah.
it's Mantis and Drax going off to Earth to find the great warrior that is Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. And this is the second to last thing that we're going to get from James Gunn in the Marvel universe, because once he finishes Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he's jumping over to DC and becoming head of their DC universe over there. So that's pretty exciting.
I think
But
we got more of Cosmo the dog, which made me very excited.
yeah,
So,
because
voiced by Maria Bakalova.
yeah, they're definitely going to be a bigger part also in volume 3. And Groot now is like this like husky teenage.
Jacked.
I think it's funny because like he's like in his football player phase. Like he's like, oh, puberty. I've got leaves in place and stuff.
Yep.
So I think it was really interesting. It also was really interesting because it looks more in this, and maybe they did. I didn't do any investigation, but it almost looks like Groot is like a practical suit that someone's wearing.
Yeah, it felt like that for sure.
Yeah.
I listened to an interview with James Gunn, and he never really got into the details of it, other than like, Groot is changing, and he's not the Groot we met in the first film. He's definitely related to him, and he's no longer this bubbly little version of him, and he's not the sort of emo-y teenage version, like preteen version that we saw before. So he did, he acknowledged it, but it's funny that like he didn't really talk about how it was handled.
I'm personally not a Baby Groot fan, and so I'm happy to get as far away from Baby Groot as possible.
Oh man,
but
John, why do you not like fun? It's messed up.
Because I don't know.
I think there's a lot of really fun things here. I think the going after Kevin Bacon because he is this great warrior, because of the way that Quill has described him is really funny, is the epitome of what works about Drax and about Mantis, right? Like they're aliens that don't that take what Peter says literally always, because they take everything, like Drax takes everything literally.
Yeah.
So it's fun, it's silly. Getting a chance to see Kevin Bacon, really just roll with it. Like the one fun thing I did hear in the interview is Kevin and him worked together on previous films right back in the day. It was what, Slither? Was it Slither?
I don't think so.
He was in one of James's first movies.
I think he was Super.
What was it?
Super, maybe.
Yeah, super. And he said he called him up and he was like, "Hey, Kevin, I got an idea. Would you want to be in this film?" And he's like, "Yeah, doing what?" And he's like, "Being you." And he's like, "What?" Like, and so he had this like really fun pitch with Kevin, and Kevin was like, "Yeah, I'm in. It's sure, why not? This would be a blast." Like so, and that this movie is full of those kind of cameos, right? Like
Yeah.
you
I
get
also
Flua Borg as the bartender, like just because he wanted to come and play. Like it's
the
amazing how many people are willing to play with James Gunn at this point.
well, the great thing about James Gunn, and I really respect about him, is like he has his people, and he always gets them work, even if it's like two lines. Even if it's like two lines in in a Disney holiday special, he'll like if they're not working, he'll get them working. Like
He said about Michael Rooker, he was asked very pointedly about like having him voice Yondu in the beginning, and he's like, "Listen, Michael has to pay his rent. He wasn't he."
exactly.
So I called him up and I was like, "Michael, do you want some rent money?" And
It's
like
like
that's the way he feels about it. Like
it's
he's like,
literally
"Michael's
a
my
dream.
people."
Yeah, it's a dream come true to have like creative compatriots like that who are like, if I work, you work, and that's really awesome, and I really love that about James Gunn. Um, and the whole reason, one of the reasons they're doing this is because like Guardians of the Galaxy is like the Marvel Star Wars it's the cosmic version of Marvel, and Star Wars had the legendary holiday special as well, which George Lucas hates. It's like, if you've seen it, it's terrible. But I thought it was really interesting that they started this with an animated opening,
Yep.
and I think that was a bit of a homage too, because the Star Wars special was kind of like a variety show. But there was a through line with Chewbacca and his family. But there was also an animated part where we first get introduced to Boba Fett. So I think like the style seems a little reminiscent of that, and I think it's just a nice throwback. But the thing that I was like, well, I mean, I was really excited about all of this. I think like like from beginning to end, it was just a really fun time. There's
Yeah.
really fun music. Like I have actually never heard the Bacon Brothers or Kevin Bacon sing, and he's quite lovely. So
Yeah.
um, but also like I just really appreciate that James Gunn gave Dave Bautista and Palm Clementif the spotlight here, because like Mantis especially got like in the movies that followed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, with like the Avengers movies and stuff, like she was in them, and like she had really funny moments, but they were like micro moments, and now she gets like a whole special, and I think that's great, and I can't wait to see, like what I'm super excited for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 now, and like I think that Mantis and Drax should have a spin-off. But I know that Dave Bautista does not want to like work out and be topless and put on all that makeup for Drax anymore.
It's a
But who
lot. I
knows?
can't imagine. Let's jump over to our
Wait,
final
wait, wait, wait,
review.
wait.
What?
For final thought,
Yeah.
go exist in the Marvel universe, and I'm very excited about that. There's a moment. If people don't know, GoBots came out a year before Transformers, and they're pretty much the rivals to them, but not really. Hanna-Barbera did the cartoon, and Tonka imported the toys for GoBots. But there's a GoBot in the Chinese, the man's Chinese theater, where like like he's just like a person in a costume, and then Drax freaks out,
Yeah.
and then Mantis is like, his sister was killed by a GoBot or whatever, like something like that. And it's like, well, there you go. I'm so excited that GoBots now exist
It,
in Marvel
Well,
Universe.
also like the star map is funny because it's got a whole bunch of people on it, and it's got John Cena, which I just again you're talking about James Gunn bringing along his like
Absolutely.
band of merry actors, and
Yep.
it's a really cute moment of like now John Cena's been in a Marvel thing, like
Right.
it's really fun. He would never be able to be in it any other way.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. It's like these Marvel. I think these Marvel specials are a really great way to not have to put out feature movies, and but also not like put out like full seasons of television shows that are underwritten.
Well, and I think
So
that like there's some really fun aspects of this, but I think the thing we should take back is, and I hope that everybody who directs and creates for Marvel really understands, is sometimes you can do these one-off specials while you're doing something else to keep the universe alive, right? Like we're
Sure.
gonna have Young Avengers, we're gonna have right, like we're gonna have the Thunderbolts, we're gonna have right, like all these teams are gonna exist
Mhm.
while you're shooting the main film. Wouldn't it be worth it to have like a 45 to 50 minute like smaller story that you can do as like a presents,
Yeah.
like especially for those to enlarge people's understanding of those teams, because we know we're going to eventually land Young Avengers, in my opinion. Thunderbolts has already been announced, right? Like
Mhm.
when we get the scrolls, right? Like there's going to be a lot of scrolls. Secret Invasion is going to introduce a lot. You're going to have Armor Wars, right? Like we've got all these big storylines, but I hope that Marvel is seeing this is a really great way for them to move forward the story in little chunks that are less precious.
I really want a West Coast Avengers before I get a Young Avengers, but I
I
love
think we're
both.
heading towards Young Avengers, man.
I don't know. We're getting Wonder Man, and now we have All White Vision, Scarlet Witch, those U.S. Agent. Those are all West Coast Avengers. So
I
we'll
mean, it's
see.
possible. It's possible. I think we end when we look for an Avengers team, they're going to be two, is what I feel like is going to happen. We've already had Patriot get introduced. We've got, we're gonna have a Hulkling probably. You've got a
Well,
young
no, I don't think we're gonna get a because we have Scar, and I think Scar is gonna be.
Scar might be the Hulkling. Yeah. I wonder which one of the scrolls they're going to bring forward, because they probably should bring a scroll to be a part of it. They
Mm,
also haven't introduced any of the alien races, right? So you've got the female creature that's made of light, who's
mhm.
amazing in the Young Avengers. So I'm interested to see what they do. But I think that my big takeaway is like, wouldn't it be cool if they created like something like this for all of those like major teams, so you get to have like a smaller story, you can get to know them better, right? Rather than it being a season of television, right? You're already shooting the movie. Like another 50 minutes would be worth it. Tell another whole story.
Yeah, but we're bird walking, and I think when it comes down to it, what we're really saying is we want more Marvel specials.
Yeah,
So
the first two have been great, no doubt.
get on it, Disney and Marvel.
All right, so let's
We
jump into our final review. We're gonna talk about Fabelmans, and this has been probably one of the most anticipated films of this year.
Mhm.
It is Spielberg telling an autobiographical story about his life, and it's the first film that Spielberg has taken to a film festival and put it in contention, and it won the audience award at TIFF, which is a really big deal heading towards the Oscars.
Mhm.
Um, it's usually a really good sign. TIFF's audience award is a really good indicator that we're heading in the right direction. I think this film is showing us a lot about sort of the fable that is the life of Steven Spielberg. So
Yeah.
you're getting this sort of fableized version of this story, but it all comes down to the fact that like he never wanted to tell this story until his parents were no longer with us, and his mother passed away I think 6 years ago, and his father passed away in the last 2 years, and that made him feel like he could possibly tackle this story.
Um, yeah. This is directed by Steven Spielberg. It's written by him and Tony Kushner. Um,
Which came out of like conversations that he had with Tony Kushner about his life. And Tony kept telling him, like, we need to write this down.
yeah,
Like,
and
so he kept capturing individual stories and then turning it into a story.
yeah, and this is, I think, the creative team you have here, like from like director of photography, producers, writers, um, John Williams doing the music. This is probably the last time you're ever going to get um, this group of people together because John Williams is retiring after he does the next Indiana Jones movie. That will be his last score that he composes. Um, yeah, and I'm sure the people that he's working with have been like working together for like 35 years. So this is kind of it's kind of an event in that regard as well.
Yeah, I think so. We were introduced in the film to a couple of incarnations of a surrogate for Steven Spielberg. Um, so Steven is replaced by Sammy Fableman. It's the Fableman family, and the older version of Sammy is played by Gabriel LaBelle.
He's
And
fantastic.
he's fantastic. Like
Fantastic.
he, when you get to the end of the film, you see a sort of 19-ish-year-old sort of frenetic version of Sammy, where he's worn down by going to school and unhappy with his roommate and all these things. And for the first time, I was like, I see it. I see the Spielbergness, the confidence that he has younger is really interesting, and I think he embodies a lot of what Spielberg has been. But those scenes where it's him and his father, him and Paul Dano playing his father, where he's talking to him, and then he goes to and eventually ends up at a studio talking to somebody about a television show, and then getting introduced to a director. Those are the scenes where I'm like, God, he just oozes the presence of Spielberg in really, really interesting ways. I listened to Spielberg talk about it on the Directors Guild podcast, and he said he knew he was in trouble when there was a long time before they started shooting, and Gabriel asked him if they could have an hourly Zoom every week,
Mm.
and he kept asking him for footage of him, and he's like, I want you to interpret this, right? I want you to make this character your own. And he's like, well, you walked stiffly as a kid. Can I bring that in? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. And then like 2 or 3 Zooms later, he was just like, so you have a weird smile. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, smile at me. And he smiles, and he's like, yeah, your top lip kind of just spreads out across your face. You don't look like you're smiling. And he's like, I knew I was in trouble because this kid like really knew me, knew who I was, like, and very quickly was like knowing more about Steven's approach to the world than even Steven knew firsthand because he was studying him. And it's a beautiful film of, in lots of ways, it's a love letter to cinema, but it's also a love letter to sort of Spielberg understanding his own genius, and not in a way that's off-putting or hard to accept. You know, if you think about the film, from the time he is a small child behind a camera, he has a level of confidence in his approach in the original shooting of the model railroad, and the fact that it took him multiple recordings to, and then edits to make it look the way he felt like it should look. And then you see him making films with his Boy Scout troop, and there's a confidence level that he comes across once he's behind the camera that is unbelievable. And you know, we've all heard stories about Spielberg and his like larger than life persona, but like when he was 22, I think it was, he directed Vanessa Redgrave, I think is the actress, and she said very pointedly like, hey, this kid didn't have enough experience to direct me. And then I worked with him, and I was like, well, all these old men who've been directing me for a long time, you do the same thing over and over again, and they have no insight or perspective. And this 22-year-old genius has more going on for him than these old men who've been directing me for the last 30 years. And like that, it comes across in this film. There's a level of confidence that young Sammy has even behind the camera that I think is not off-putting, but telling you who Spielberg sees himself as.
Yeah, like I think all those moments when he is when he's super passionate about making movies, from like when he's a little kid and he, makes a movie about a train wreck, all those things, like all those moments, like I really enjoyed, but I didn't enjoy this movie.
Really?
Like, yeah, I think that this movie was overly written and melodramatic and maudlin, and I think that Tony Kushner's script, I think that there wasn't a like. I think that like the guy who plays Sammy Fabelman is incredible, but it was really hard for me to listen and watch Michelle Williams' character. I thought that she was super melodramatic, and I think that um, the discovery that she was emotionally and very small, in a small way, physically, but more so emotionally, being unfaithful to her father was
Yeah.
just like so bashed over our head, that I was just like, yeah, I get it, and I fucking hate it. It was something that I was like, I hate this, and I don't like this character. I don't, like I was like, so yeah, I was not a big fan of Michelle Williams' performance. I think that she was in a different movie. I think that like Paul Dano was able to maneuver his dialogue in a way that was approachable, and you know, like him as kind of the stoic kind of left brain scientific father, and always like explaining things. Like I enjoyed that.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think that there were incredible moments. I think that the moment of moments in this movie, that I think will might might garner a best supporting actor for the shortest amount of time on screen will go to Judd Hirsch. Judd
Man,
Hirsch plays
he's
Mitzi.
like a fucking lion that shows up in the middle of this movie. He is
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. So something that happens is, you know, Mitzi Fabelman, who is played by Michelle Williams, her mother dies, and she takes it really hard, and her uncle, who she has been apparently scared of her entire life, comes to like see the family, you know, like sit and shiva a little bit with them, and really like meet. You know, he meets Sammy for the first time, and Uncle Boris is his name, and he, you know, he started as like a circus carny,
Yeah,
and
he
then he
was part
trans
of the Ringling Brothers like circus in the 20s, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and then he transitioned into film because like, you know, like I don't want to do the accent, but he's like, you know, where like he's like the circus hates Jews, but you know, but Hollywood loves Jews, or something along those lines, but he talks to Sammy about being an artist and what that means, and he sees himself in Sammy, and that it's going to cost you everything in your life, and it's going to be this drug that you can never, you know, like this like urge you're always going to want. And it's just like the most amazing performance. I, you know, like I've seen Judd Hirsch in a bunch of stuff, but man, oh man, like he just came in there like a tornado and just like
Yeah.
blew me away, and he was like, wow. um so yeah, like if we have to talk about award seasons, I think like he better get nominated for a bunch of stuff, or at least recognitions. And especially if this movie is going to get a lot of recognitions, he better be one of the people who gets it. Um, but yeah,
I
like
think Paul Dano's approach to Bert is fantastic. I
yeah,
think that there's a scene at the end where an envelope comes from Mitzi of photos of her living her life right back in Arizona,
mhm,
and Sammy's looking through the photos and doesn't think about the fact that there could be a photo in it that might show his mother and Benny, right?
yeah,
And it's a great photo of the girls, and in the background you have Benny and Mitzi, and obviously like lovingly looking at one another,
yeah,
and that 30 seconds of Paul Dano's face, like looking at the photo, and then you realize, like, oh no, it must be, oh God,
yeah,
no. And like the way he handles it, that like it's not overacted, it's not, and he just walks away, and he's then breaks down and says to Sammy, like, then you should stop going to school, right? Like
mm,
he tries to reckon in that moment with like the way he thought about his wife, right? That she was this free spirit that he protected and that he could never make happy. And that he was
mhm,
kind of doing the same thing to Sammy. Like it, all that recognition happens in like 20 seconds on his face.
yeah,
And it's really powerful.
yeah, yeah. Like I think Paul Dano does such a fantastic job as well, and you know, like I uh all the sisters, that all the young actresses that play the sisters, like they, some of them like don't get a lot of spotlight, but when they do, like they take it
Yeah.
and they run with it. I think it's fantastic. um
They're all super fun, to be honest. All the sisters, and I think it's one of the things that Spielberg talks about when he's interviewed about this is that like it was his family, right? Like
mhm,
he wanted to make sure one of his sisters is actually a writer and had written a script about this years ago, and Tony Kushner didn't use that script, but it, he wanted to make sure that they were represented faithfully, is the
yeah,
way I think he was putting it, because this is such a personal story. He wanted to make sure it wasn't whitewashing. I think that's the other thing. Like, I can't not compare this to James Gray's Armageddon Time, where James
mhm,
Gray talks about his surrogate being kind of a jerk. He's like, because if you ask my wife, I'm a jerk. If I was writing a story about me, I was a jerk as a kid. I'm a jerk now. Like,
mhm,
and I feel like it's so interesting because it's the other end of that spectrum where it's like, you see Spielberg almost like telling this glorious story of his like birth of a genius, and The scene that I think is the most interesting for me, thinking about Spielberg, the director, is during the sequence when they're talking about divorce. It cuts to a perspective where you see him in the mirror, in the reflection, shooting it.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
So
he's like, it's, I think there it's half he's remembering what his, he's half he's doing it, but I
yes,
think he's also remembering what his uncle Boris told him too. There's like I think, to me, in his eyes there was like a realization that it's like, oh my god, I'm like never going to be a part of my family anymore because I just want to film everything.
yeah. Well, and I think it's also great because that is where he's most comfortable, right? Like
Yeah,
Spielberg even said at one point, like I've always felt like there's a camera between me and the world,
right.
right? Like, and even in that moment in the scene where his parents are telling them about divorce, he almost like out of body experiences what it would be like to be, and he thinks about how would he shoot this, and you see it in the reflection, right? Like, and I think that's the interesting piece of this is like Spielberg admitting, like, maybe I'm not human, right? Like, I'm amazing behind the camera, but also like I am devoid of being able to be in this moment, which is really interesting because Spielberg has been married for many years and has many children, like has had a family, right? But it's interesting that the approach that we are given to this movie is that if you are going to make great art and art is a part of who you are, you cannot, it will always tear you away from family, which is what
Sure.
Uncle Boris is trying to tell him.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Spielberg has exhibited that himself as an adult, you know.
Mhm.
So I'm reckoning with, like, I don't know what he's trying to tell us. Was Boris right? Was John Ford right? Like,
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, yeah, at the end of the movie, like he meets like a super famous director of the time, like a movie director, and he gives him like a really hard nose, like uh, advice. And what did you think about how the movie ended? Um,
I found it clever, and I felt like it was kind of perfect for the film that we were just shown.
mhm.
I think the funny thing is, I had heard in one interview that Spielberg was going to record his own voice saying "cut" at the end,
Oh,
um, and I thought that would have been interesting. But what was funny is, and what John's alluding to, and it's not a big spoiler, but in the end, John Ford, who's the director, tells him, he walks him through two pieces of art, and he shows him these pieces of art and asks him what he sees. And in both of the pictures, right, the horizon line is either at the top of the frame or the bottom of the frame. And he says, if you can find film, if you can make things where the horizon's at the top or the bottom, it's interesting. If it's in the middle, it's boring, right?
yeah.
And
And
that's
he
like
tells him
sort
to
of the
zoom
hard
out.
nosed moment of like, kid, like, pay attention to this.
Yeah,
And then he leaves this director's building and walks outside, and the camera is, he's perfectly middle horizon,
yeah,
and then the camera drops and the horizon line moves to the top of the frame. And I liked it. I thought it was clever and a fun way to acknowledge that moment. But I just listened to Spielberg talking about this, and he said that he talked about it with the actual camera guy, and the guy was too good a camera person to make it look janky.
mm,
So he did it himself. He literally took the camera to be able to get that movement, and then he contacted the studio that was doing the post effects, and he was like, "Make it more jiggly, and make it look like a less, like, more amateurish."
yeah,
So I know I acknowledge what he was trying to accomplish. So I think it worked on me. You know.
yeah. I think for me, like that moment, I enjoyed it. It was a bit self-referential,
Yep.
which I don't think you can in any other part of the movie, except
Yep.
there's one part. Oh, there's one part where when he's in high school in California and he talks about, he's like, "Oh, like people will never know that you're," like he's talking to this guy that's been bullying him.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, like no one will ever know that you're sentimental unless I make a movie about it later." And I was like, "Oh, that's a little self-referential."
Yeah.
I think also for me is like the tracking of the movie was hard. Like, in the beginning, I'm like, wow, we're off to a great start. It's like little Spielberg or little Fabelman going to see a
Yeah.
movie, being blown away, and how amazing it is that he has to like redo it in his head over and over. And his mom finally, he gets like
toy trains, and he actually films it. And there's this moment that Spielberg, sets it up where like he's playing the projector, but he's playing it in his hands, and you see
Yeah.
the train. And I was like, yeah, I'm on board. This is great. And I just feel like it kind of, the stuff with the mother, like I know it's very important to Steven, but for me the dialogue and the performance was off-putting and took me out of it. And again, like I said, I think like her emotional infidelity was a little a little hit me over the head a little too much. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
So the subtlety there was a little off for me. But I think that the movie, it's like I don't hate the movie. I think that the movie shines when it shines. It shines. But for me, the things that I think where it faltered, it took me out of it a lot. Like I was just like, I was ready for Michelle Williams to like be shipped off to be with Seth Rogen pretty early. I'm like, just go, just get out of here, just go. I don't need to see you anymore.
Well, and I think one interesting aspect is that he like showed his films in the closet, right? Like he did all this
Mhm.
work and he had this like little world that he
Little
created,
theater, yeah,
right? That was his own theater.
yeah,
And the fact that like he showed his mother that film of all the edited material and he
mhm.
closed the doors, right? She was in her own private theater
Yeah, yeah,
to experience that, I think was a beautiful way to like, it may have hit you over the head with the tone and tenor, but I think that storytelling method of like setting her up with the projector and then him leaving, like letting her just reckon with what he saw, was effective to me.
yeah.
um
And yes, and I will agree with you that moment was really effective. But leading up to it, I had seen so much of like she's clearly at least emotionally cheating
yes.
with Seth Rogen. I'm like, I get it. Like
Yeah.
as it's like I had as an audience member had known so much
Yeah.
because Sammy like sits on this for a long time and is like and when he's filming, they're showing it in the background, and you just like as an audience member, if you're actively watching this movie, you pick up on it. And then it just seems like once he you see it happening, and then when Sammy sees it happening, he like just shuns his mom, and then all of a sudden I feel like from shunning his mom to like showing the video, it just like like the lapse in time, I think are like frustrated me. It's like
Yeah.
things took forever, and then some things were just like a hiccup in time where I wish those were the things that took a little longer. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's an edit probably where we don't see as much of the actual edited material
mm,
of the film that he shows his mother, and then we watch it with her. That I think could have landed it better, so it didn't feel like we were sitting with it for so long. Right?
yeah,
Sometimes there's is a really great aspect of like sometimes telling the audience where we're going, so that way you anticipate the
yeah,
crash. But I think in
yeah,
this case, if we had seen it with her and we then understood why Sammy was so annoyed, we would have had a much we were because we spent so much time in his perspective, we knew too much and none of it had an impact on us when Mitzi saw it for the first time, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's you're hitting my point right on the head, where it was, like we were our hands were being held through the whole infidelity.
yeah.
That like, imagine we had no idea it was happening. We didn't see what he was editing. He just got really sad. He got
Yes.
really, and I know this is us kind of rewriting the movie, but
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he gets really mad at his mom. He doesn't know why, and then all of a sudden
Right.
we
I think the
see
emotional
we
punch would have been
see,
harsher. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We need to shout out. There's two people I really want to shout out before we end this.
Yeah.
Chloe East, who plays Monica, his Christian Jesus obsessed girlfriend in high
Mhm.
school, is unbelievable. She is a breath of fresh air in this
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
He is so uptight and doesn't know how to deal with girls, but like she is just. You can't stop smiling every time she's interacting with him. All the stuff where she's trying to get him to pray, like all of it is just, it's beautifully fun, and she's so much needed in this film.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that like she has a shrine in her room
Oh my
with
god.
like heartthrobs of the time and Jesus, and
Yeah.
she's like, and he's like, there's a lot of a lot of men on your wall. She's like, well, they're high. He's like, Jesus. She's like, Jesus is hot.
Yeah.
You know, cool. Like, yeah, she was really great. I
She's
think.
so fun. And then I think like the caricature-esque bad guy, right? We can call like Sam Reckner plays Logan Hall, who is the person he shoots the Ditch Day film and makes look like the perfect version of himself.
He's like
Um,
he makes him look like Captain America.
he does, and I think there's a really great emotional component there of like I, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think it's almost Spielberg saying to us like I can't but help use my tool the way I use it, right? Like I didn't want this to be the film I made, but and he even says in the moment, he's like, why did you do this? And he's like, I don't know, maybe I wanted you to like be nice to me for 20 seconds but like I think the thing we're supposed to take away from it is like Spielberg can't help but shoot what's in front of him and make it look
Yes.
as good as possible.
Yeah,
So
like
he like it's a really interesting moment in the film for me of like I get it. Like
yeah.
he is Captain America in that
Yeah.
school.
I agree with you. I think they should have. Again, I'm like we're editing and writing this movie, but whatever. Like, I think that they should have omitted Sammy saying that because to me the way I was interpreting it is like, oh, he is a genius, and he will put everything in his personal life aside to
Yep.
get the best shot. And I think that is a stronger choice than like I wanted you to like me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think that the way that they set Sammy up throughout the entire movie, it is like he is an old soul as far as film goes,
Yeah.
making film, being a filmmaker. And I think that, having something where it's like, I don't care what you've done to me. I don't care that you like call me a Jew and like you and your friend bully me for being a Jew. Um, it was just the best shot of the day and I had to
Yeah.
take it. I feel like I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
also the films that he makes with his like early group of friends, like
Uh-huh.
those are they're such like a love letter to making film and like cleverly figuring out things before the
Oh
internet
yeah.
existed. Like
Yeah.
the punching of holes through the film so that way the light would come through and make it appear as though it was a gunshot. And
Yeah.
then like the board with the dust on it so that way when the person's running, they step on it, it looks like a bomb went off behind them. There's
Yeah.
just like squibs, figuring out squibs, right? Like all of it is just so it's this like encapsulation of like what it must have felt like to meet him at 15.
Yeah.
Like it must have felt overwhelming to all the people around him. Like, how does this kid get it?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it makes and like he spends most of the movie being a Boy Scout, and it makes so much sense why those moments in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade are so good.
yeah,
It's because he is Indiana Jones.
yeah,
Like he was living through River Phoenix
yep,
in that movie, and it's very cool.
yep. I'm sad that you didn't love it as much as me, but I also think there's a reason why. I think the big one for me is I was excited to see this film. I do think it is probably not going to get as much awards recognition as I think people thought it was going to get when it was announced.
Right.
But also, this is kind of a swan song for the Spielberg squad.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we might get director of photography, like cinematography. We might get like there's a lot of things here that could happen. John Williams getting a nod would not surprise me, even though his score doesn't start until like 22 minutes into the film, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And I think if anything, like this movie might pass him by. Like they might pass him by for this movie, but as long as Indiana Jones 5 is good,
yeah,
like because that's his last movie. He said that's his last movie. So
yeah. But I think there's a
like,
good possibility of a lot of those. I think they've decided to run Michelle Williams in Best Actress, which I think is probably to her detriment. I think it's the harder road to hoe this year for awards because you're up against Michelle Yeoh and the woman from Till,
right on.
Daniel Detweiler, and Kate Blanchett. Right, like I just feel like there's a really established group of best actresses that all would not surprise me. Also, you've got one of the women from She Said,
I
right?
also
Like,
I want Viola Davis from The Woman King to be
Woman
nominated.
King, absolutely. Viola Davis was amazing. So I think she's actively chosen a harder path here, but
Mhm.
um,
Well, she hasn't chosen it. That's the producer's fault.
yeah.
So she's
Um,
got
it's
no
also not her film. That's the
Mm.
hard part of like thinking about it, right? Like so many of these other films we're talking about are revolve around this person, right? Like Michelle Yeoh and Everything Everywhere All at Once, or Kate Blanchett and Tar, right? Like
Mhm.
The Woman King, Viola Davis, right? Like these movies, Till revolves around her character.
Yeah.
These are all really important films that surround the main character.
Yeah.
Michelle Williams in this film as Mitzi is literally the second or third most important in this person in this film,
But
and
also,
that could hurt her like
sure.
possibilities here. You know,
I think that was one of the annoying things I found about her, because the way that they wrote her and the way that she was acting, and this isn't a dig on Michelle Williams. This is just a dig on the character. Like, it was her story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And me as a viewer, I'm like, hey, character, sit down. It's not your story.
Yeah.
I was constantly frustrated with it.
I think that's the way that Spielberg saw his mother, right? Like that she was the
Sure.
center of every story, you know?
Yeah,
So
and that haircut is like to a T, his mom and
yeah.
everything.
I'm excited to see whether or not they decide to nominate Paul Dano. I think he's really good in this, and I think he's had a hell of a year with the Batman, right? Like,
Yep.
I would be surprised if he's not nominated for this or for whatever his next film is. To be honest, he's on such an amazing trajectory. Like, he's fantastic, and subtly steals a lot of scenes from other people who are doing great work, right? Like, you know, and not in a showy way, not in a like upstagey, like the scenes between him and the older version of Sammy, right, are fantastic. You know, like they're believable. He oozes this like empathy and sadness that is hard to play without overplaying it. You know, like, and I think the same thing with Gabriel LaBelle. Like he would not surprise me as going and getting a nod for best actor in this film. It's his film.
Yeah.
And he's unbelievably believable. You know, like there's not a time where I'm like, this is not what I expect Spielberg's, incarnation on film to feel like. He's petulant as a child at times. He feels like he needs to live behind a camera, even when he's not using the camera. He sleeps with the camera under his pillow. Like, there's so many little nods to like how much cinema and film is important to him, and all of it works. It resonates. You know, it doesn't feel like a petulant child. It feels like Spielberg on film. You know, or the way I would expect Spielberg to feel.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we can kind of like mostly agree, but a little bit disagree, and still have a good conversation about it.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of this, right? Like, I leave these films at this point, and the conversations we have here, I also look for in podcasts. So I tend to feel like I've spent a little bit of time already trying to fill how I feel, but I also I understand what you're saying, right? Like Michelle Williams, I think a lot of people have talked about seeing it a second time and feeling different about her performance. Like, I think a lot of people came out of their first viewing of the film similar to you, especially critics. And a few of them have come back and said, like, after on a second viewing, the film feels, once you know where it's going and how it's unfolding, it feels a little more in line. But I also think there's, it's okay if we don't agree. Like, I think this is a film that a lot of people, I think a lot of people in a certain demographic are going to see this, right? If you've been watching movies for the last 40 years, you're probably going to see this film. If you are in your 20s, this movie is going to not resonate. It's going to have a really hard path to making $100 million, is my guess.
Yeah. And people know that this is like Steven Spielberg doing an autobiographical movie. So if you like any Steven Spielberg movie, I think you're gonna be interested in at least checking this movie out.
Yeah, I think if you have a strong affinity to watching movies, you're definitely gonna be interested at least to see what is going on here, and I think that's exciting, right? Like, I think there's something to be said about about the idea that we might get people to the theater. But like its opening weekend is not that high.
Right.
Its opening weekend, I think, was only it was like a $8 million opening weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday was 229 and 34. So we're talking 6.2. Yeah, like just shy of 8.3 million is what it looks like it opened this weekend. And Spielberg made a joke in the interview I listened to that said he had only gone to therapy when he was trying to get out of going to war, and it turned out the therapist was pro the war, so he wouldn't write him a letter saying he shouldn't go. And he's like, so this is a $40 million therapy lesson, is what it feels like to me, session. So it's gonna cost a lot to make back that money, but I think there's a lot of goodwill, right, to this film, and this isn't gonna hurt him,
Yeah, totally.
But it's also long. It's 2 hours and 31 minutes for an autobiographical pick about a director,
Yeah. Like sometimes I think people who don't love movies sometimes don't want to go see movies about movies.
Yeah.
So
I think right now it's worldwide is only 3.4 million. So it's got a ways to go. Okay, let's end it there. I think for next week we're going back and forth. I think we're probably going to settle on Glass Onion, so we might get a chance to discuss our friend Ryan Johnson's newest delving into the world of Knives Out. I got a chance to see that at Middleburg, as I discussed a little bit, but I'm excited to go see it again. And I think John see it for the first time. So hopefully that'll be our main review for next week, and we'll figure out if there's something else we're going to talk about. But I also have a little bit more time on my hands, so that's why I've got a lot more films that I've been watching. So I am sure I will have an entire murderer's row of films to discuss next week.
Amazing. Can't wait to have those conversations.
This has been really fun. Thank you so much for listening. Again, ratings and reviews all over the place. It's really helpful. And find us at geekonfilm.com. And from there, you can find all our social networks and however you want to interact with us. Thank you so much for hanging in there.
Have a good night, guys.
See ya. This has been a Geek on Film podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.